Hello, welcome to Confessions of a Frustrated Game Master. I am Robert the narrator, and thank you for joining me for another episode of Confessions. So, this episode of Confessions, I will be discussing the science fiction renaissance in tabletop gaming. Now, I personally don't remember a time when so many major companies were releasing science fiction or modern RPGs at one time. Now, I haven't done any research on that. It's just a feeling that I have. So if you did 15 minutes of research, you probably could tell me that I'm completely wrong. But as of late, it just feels like there's a lot of science fiction or modern RPGs being released by major companies. So what I'm talking about is, first of all, Starfinder by Paizo is being released around Gen Con this year. It's based on their Pathfinder RPG. I have seen some of the illustrations. I've done a little bit of listening to some actual plays, and a great RPG YouTube channel out there, the Complex Games Apologist. I've listened to some of his podcast or YouTube channel in regards to Starfinder, and I find it very interesting. But Paizo does also an amazing job with their products. They always put out quality products, and just seeing how gorgeous the product is going to be makes me want to own it, and I'll talk a little bit about that later maybe. So Pathfinder, yeah, that's coming out around Gen Con, and it looks gorgeous and it looks interesting. Now, Pathfinder itself for me is a rules heavy system, and I have for many years kind of moved away from rules heavy, and rules medium is kind of my sweet spot. And from what I have gathered, they have made some changes to Pathfinder in the areas of weapon damage and overall the hit point system, but I don't know everything that they have streamlined, so I can't say for sure that Starfinder will or will not be rules heavy or rules medium or whatever. So I'm still on the fence about that. But from what I've seen, and Paizo has always done gorgeous quality product, I just want to own it just for the illustrations. So that's really exciting. And then also coming out this is it this summer or this fall, a new Star Trek RPG is going to be released, and that's going to be released by Modiphius and under their 2D20 system, which is really unique. I own one of their 2D20 games, Mutant Chronicles, which is a remake of an old diesel punk science fiction RPG from earlier in the hobby. And the 2D20 system is really interesting. It was created by the same designer who created Fantasy Flight Games' Star Wars RPG. And first of all, you roll 2d20 instead of 1d20, so that's unique in and of itself, and you have to roll below your skill, and every die that comes up under your skill, you get a success, and usually you'll only need one success, but that's really interesting and really unique. I love systems that are different. I love different experiences. You know, different isn't always good, but at least you're not doing the same old stuff that you have been doing. And it's great. We're going to have a Star Trek game in the hobby again, a current Star Trek game. We have a Star Wars game out there. So that's fantastic and really interesting. And then last but not least, Green Ronin is releasing a modern version of their AGE or Age Fantasy Age role-playing game, and it's called World of Lazarus. It's based on a comic book, which I have to admit I had never heard of. And essentially the setting of the comic is kind of a futuristic, dystopian world with a kind of a feudal system and controlled by corporations. And there are several families in the world. I think maybe 13 families, don't quote me on that. And each one is has a warlord that controls that family's army. And I guess the reason they call it the World of Lazarus is because that warlord or leader of each family's army is immortal. They can be killed, but they will come back. And that setting actually reminds me of a show that I really like that is on the AMC network called Into the Badlands. That's kind of, you have different barons who control particular parts of the land, and firearms have been outlawed, so everyone does martial arts or fights with swords, and they have leaders of their armies. The barons have their regents that lead their armies. The armies are called clippers. And it really, Lazarus kind of sounds like that kind of setting. And I've always wanted to run a game in a setting like Into the Badlands, and World of Lazarus is very similar to that. And Modern Age is going to come out at the same time. That's coming out, I believe, in the fall. So we have all of these science fiction games coming out around the same times, being released by major companies, and it's really exciting. I wish I knew about this before. Now you tell me that all of these science fiction games are coming out. It probably wouldn't have been a big deal anyway. My old group doesn't do science fiction really, and some of these games are probably going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of upper level rules medium to rules heavy probably, and my old group doesn't do that either. They really prefer rules light, so probably doesn't matter. But it's an exciting time that all of these science fiction games are coming out. It's great to see that. Science fiction is kind of the sometimes the redheaded stepchild of genres. No, you know what? Maybe supers is the redheaded stepchild of genres in the tabletop hobby. But it's great to see modern sci-fi games being released, and I could be completely wrong, but I feel like I don't remember a time when so many major companies were releasing these games. And when I keep harping on major companies, and the reason for that is I have discovered something about myself in the last couple of years, and that is I really like attractive, appealing, well done gaming products when I purchase a game. Because for me, part of the immersion is having a great representation artistically of the world, so that you can look at the world or show your players artistic representations or renderings of the setting to give them an idea of what the world is like. And I've always been drawn to that. I mentioned in a previous episode that I was looking for some science fiction games out there, because I think that the hobby does lack well supported science fiction RPGs. And I mentioned the fact that I looked at Traveler, which I don't have a lot of experience with previously in the hobby, but I looked at the current edition of Traveler, and the product was really bland and didn't have a lot of quality art, and I just couldn't get into it. And I remember seeing Traveler in the earlier days when I was in the hobby, and I can never remember being drawn to Traveler artistically, and that was kind of a turnoff for me. So I really love a strong artistic representation of a setting or an RPG book, quality products, because it really immerses me in the world. And I think that's why I continue to harp on major companies releasing these products. Now, today, it is easier than ever to make your own RPG and get it out into the world. We have the internet, we have PDFs, we have websites like Drive-Thru RPG or RPG Now, where you can put your product out there and folks can easily get a digital or electronic copy of that. And we did not always have that. As a matter of fact, in my early days in the hobby, I based my game purchases on the company that was releasing the game, because I would only want to buy a game if I thought the company was going to do a great job at supporting it, because we're in a golden era of tabletop RPGs right now. But back in the day, before the internet and PDFs and digital files, you just came across ads in gaming magazines, and you would find out about products from your local game store and keep your fingers crossed and count it down the days and hope that a product would come out. So it was completely different earlier in the hobby, and you could, games would always get delayed. They get delayed today, but you didn't have awesome resources. Like, you couldn't just pop online and get ideas for adventures. And if you were new in the hobby, you really depended on companies bringing out these adventures to give you ideas. Even if you didn't run the published adventures as written, you wanted that information because you couldn't get support. Just jump online and get support. So I really did base my purchases on, is it a large company that's publishing it? Do they have a good record? Are they going to support their product? So in the back of my mind, even today, I will usually give a major, large gaming company the benefit of the doubt when it comes to their products, even though the reality is, with Kickstarter and Drive-Thru RPG and PDFs, even small companies are putting out gorgeous, well-supported products, and you can get easy access to them. But it's, some habits are really hard to break. So maybe that is kind of an illusion that major companies are releasing these sci-fi RPGs, and it's some type of sci-fi renaissance. Because I know small companies like small companies, I think it's Wayne Dyer's company, released Fragged Empire a while back. I don't know what other sci-fi RPGs were released around the same time, but he kickstarted his game, and I've seen the game, and it's a quality product. So my old habits of not wanting to get into a game because it's a smaller company, or the company may be a large company that has a bad track record at supporting its games, maybe that's an antiquated mindset. How do you feel about that? Have you been in the hobby long enough to remember gaming or purchasing games before the advent of the internet, or PDFs, or Drive-Thru RPG, or Kickstarter? And did you ever base your purchases or getting into a game on how reliable or whether or not a company was a small company or a major company, because I certainly did. And today it's really hard to break that habit, even though we're in a golden age where even if you haven't published 1,000 copies and spent $10,000 to get your game out there, you can get it out there digitally, and it's much quicker and much easier than it has ever been to get a role-playing game out there. So what do you think about that? Am I accurate? Is this some type of renaissance for modern or science fiction RPGs? Is that correct? Are you excited about the RPGs that are coming out there, kind of shaking things up, giving another genre in our hobby some love? I would love to hear from you in the comments, and I'll link the 3 different games that I've discussed. It's really exciting. Of all of the games, I think I want to get maybe Starfinder just because it's going to be gorgeous. As you know, I'm not currently doing any running, just preparing for playtesting for my game. So I really won't be, I'm kind of breaking my rule. I'm purchasing a game that I don't think I'm going to get an opportunity to run just because it's going to be gorgeous, and I can use it as reference maybe for some of my games in the future. So thank you for joining me for this episode of Confessions of a Frustrated Game Master. Please feel free to leave some comments, and thank you for joining me wherever you are. Good morning or good evening.